Hey, what's going on, people? It's Low Heat and welcome to Q&A session number 2, answering your questions that I got in the comments of my videos. And if you're specifically here for the questions about Maschine and Ableton Push, you can skip ahead using the timestamps. Let's get right into answering those questions, because there are plenty of questions this time. First question from Adrian Cambier, and sorry if I'm not pronouncing it the correct way. Do you also do DJ gigs, or are you just focused on music production? Mixing and mastering, you do it yourself too? I used to do DJ gigs and live sets, but I stopped doing that even before the pandemic. I may get back into this in the future, but at this point I'm focused on producing music, producing content for YouTube, for Instagram. And yeah, I definitely mix my own tracks. I enjoy doing that. I master my own tracks as well. However, I wouldn't call myself a mastering engineer. I'm still learning about that. Bang Matteo wants to know, are you self-taught on the keys? If so, any tips on getting better on the keys? I am indeed self-taught on the keys. I haven't really had much piano training. Honestly, if I was to give any tips about that, I would suggest that you learn a couple of scales and practice them. Learn how to play the chords that are from the corresponding key, but definitely make sure you learn some music theory to help you along the way. Next question from Ed M. A follow-up question about exporting to Ableton. Do you use any kind of effects while creating in Maschine before exporting, or do you add all effects only in Ableton? I definitely use effects in Maschine, and obviously a lot of the sounds that come with Maschine, or the sounds from Complete, they already have effects on them. And so the effects that I add in Maschine, these are basically not mixing effects, mainly stuff that would add to the vibe of the sound or sound design type of effects, but I don't really do much EQing, like correcting frequencies or compression. I do that in Ableton when I mix my Maschine beats. So yeah, definitely effects are a very important part of getting the sounds right from the beginning, whether you're making the beats in Maschine or Ableton or whatever platform you're using. Definitely using effects gives you that vibe, that inspiration to make the beat. Another question from Calvin. Hey man, do you think the Push 2 is a good investment in 2021? I'm thinking of picking one up for Black Friday, since I already have a standalone MPC and want a controller for Ableton. Absolutely, man. The Push 2 is a great investment at this point. Even though it's 6 years old, I don't think a new one is coming anytime soon. I may be wrong about that, but I listened a podcast, I think last week. It was the Live Music Producers podcast. And the guy who presents the podcast, he works closely with Ableton. And he said that maybe a new Push is not coming as soon as some people would expect. And honestly, the Push 2 is really very good. It's almost perfect as it is. So there's no reason to wait. If you get a good deal, it's an awesome controller. If you want to make beats in Ableton, obviously it's more of a beat making controller, song creation controller. It's not that great for live performance, although of course you can do that as well. But yeah, if this is what you need, the Push 2 is awesome and definitely highly recommended for any Ableton user. Go ahead with that. Next question from Rolf Ski. For a hybrid workflow, what would be your favorite, this or the Maschine MK3? And a similar question from Michael Maslaney. How often do you use Push 2 compared to your MK3? When do you use one versus the other? So these questions, they are both similar. It's kind of Maschine versus Push questions. I do have 2 videos on the topic, and I will link one of them down below in the description of this video, so you can check it out for more detailed answer to these questions. But to answer briefly, I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses. They are both great, of course. So the Maschine is definitely great for the hardware workflow, really fun, really fast to use. It's super amazing for that. But then the software is not as well developed as Ableton Live. And that's not a bad thing, it's kind of actually simpler to use. So I don't think I need too much stuff to be added to the Maschine software. But if you want one-stop shop, that would be Ableton with the Push 2, because it does everything. However, because it does everything, the Push 2 workflow is maybe a bit less quick, and maybe there are more things that you can't do from the controller with the Ableton Push. However, it's still very, very good. It's still very easy to use, very inspiring, so I definitely would recommend both, and that's why I have both, because I can't decide which one is best. I use both. When I use one versus the other, honestly, sometimes there are periods where I use the Push more, sometimes there are periods that I use the Maschine more. Like I said, the Maschine gives me this hardware workflow. Even though I don't have the Maschine Plus, I enjoy using that without looking at the computer screen, as if I was on a standalone drum machine. And with the Push 2, there's the thing about audio recording. I like audio recording better in Ableton and the Push 2. So if I was using my hardware synthesizers or wanted to record some audio straight up without using MIDI, Ableton with the Push 2 would be my go-to. But I'm used to using the mouse a lot with Ableton, so maybe that's why I don't use Push exclusively with the hardware workflow. But yeah, both great controllers, both great platforms. Up to you to choose one over the other. Clayton von Kluge. And sorry man if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Maybe let me know down in the comments how it's pronounced if I'm getting it wrong. But the question was, what are your thoughts on the Roland SP404? Do you still have yours? Do you use it much? Do you think it's still worth getting one in 2022? What's a good, easy to use alternative? And this question, I think I got it before Roland announced the SP404 Mark II. And with this already out on the market, the answer would definitely be, I think it's definitely worth buying one. I wouldn't necessarily say that about the previous models, because for me they were lacking so many features for music creation. They were more geared towards using it as a live performance thing, just to trigger loops and sequencing and making beats while possible. It was kind of, I don't know, people were using all sorts of workarounds to get that working, and I'm not really into that. And with the new ones, I think these are definitely good for making music. They have some really essential features that the previous models were lacking. I still have mine, the SP404. I don't really use it much. However, it's great to run stuff through it, to add some dirt, to add some character. So this is what I would use it. I wouldn't really make music with that. I think it's definitely worth getting the Mark II in 2021. But honestly, like, if you guys are struggling to make good music with Maschine or with Ableton, you will struggle to do that with the SP404 as well. So, I mean, I'm getting a bit sidetracked here, kind of off topic, but the grass isn't always greener on other platforms. So make sure you learn what you have before buying other pieces of gear. So Professional Hater wanted to know, do you gain stage in Maschine? And no, I don't. I only make beats in Maschine, so I don't really think about that too much. But I do have the instinct of preventing clipping, so I turn down my master track or turn down all individual tracks so that there's some that goes into the master doesn't cause clipping. But inside the actual Maschine mixer, it's very hard to clip stuff because it operates at a 32-bit floating point precision. So it means that we have a huge amount of headroom. So as long as you're not clipping the master, it's not really a problem. And I know some effects react differently if you run too hot of a signal to them, but I don't think that's a huge problem. I think people make it seem a bigger problem than it is, especially when it comes to making beats. It's just important not to export your stems being clipped so make sure you turn them down if they're clipping before exporting, but again, not really a huge problem. So gain staging in Maschine, I don't really think about that. When I use Maschine, I think about the vibe of the music and I'm just having fun. I don't think about technical stuff too much. Mr. Diabo. Sorry man, maybe I got this wrong, but anyways. I noticed you play Arturia keyboard. Do you like it more than something similar from native, like 32 or 61? Asking because I'm thinking of buying together with this, with the MK3. I've solved the Arturia key step. I don't really like the keys on the Arturia keyboards, and I would definitely recommend any Native Instruments keyboard over any Arturia keyboard. Like, there's not much more to say. Get the Native Instruments ones. I think they're better. Arturia is pretty cool too, but you know, the keys, the build quality, Native Instruments stuff, I like it much better. Thomas Dietz wanted to know, what iMac is that? What specs does it have? It's a pretty old machine actually, my iMac. It's a 2012 iMac with an i5 quad-core processor and 24 gigs of RAM. Works great for music actually. Not that great for video editing, but I do that on my MacBook Pro, so the iMac is really decent. Even an older one for music production works very, very well. And last question from Steve Cow. What mic is that you're using? I like it. This is the Rode Procaster. It has a very warm and thick sound, and I like it too. It's a dynamic mic and it prevents noises coming from the street or from outside to get recorded. So very nice mic. I like it for spoken word. And these are all the questions, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments, so maybe I can do another Q&A video in the near future. And see you in the next video.